Hello Eric, this is my feedback to your summary from last week. So let's start. In this video lecture, we want to include the title of it in the first sentence. Okay, name of the speaker claims that. That's a good use of a reporting verb. Groundbreaking ideas. In order to be innovative. That's a very nice use of an embedded phrase here. Have to find their practical economic realization. Okay, I would mention actually invention and innovation right in the first sentence because that's what the whole thing is about. So to make it a little bit more focused, we want to give the whole thing away in the first sentence. And if you're summarizing the main idea of a sentence without mentioning what it's about, which is invention and innovation, then it becomes a little strange. So I would just add that. But other than that, the first sentence is quite good. Firstly, he noted, remember we used the present tense in reporting verbs. So just use the present simple. He notes the necessity of comprehending the differences between the two definitions. Okay, actually that could be sort of what the main idea is. You could say that Archibuggy claims that it is crucial to be able to distinguish between invention and innovation, something like that. I mean, this video was very descriptive. It's kind of hard to find an argument in what was almost entirely pure description. Okay, according to his arguments, invention means a new thought that has not found its practical implementation. An innovation is this invention used for wide-scale commercial purposes. Okay, you've done here a good job. You've tried to paraphrase your own words, and it sounds good. The sentence is balanced. You can do, instead of a semicolon, which is fine, you could do while here. I mean, you end up with a slightly long sentence, but that's okay. The while separates the two clauses very well. So that may be a little bit more stylish. You can combine those two long clauses. Invention means a new thought that has not found its... I'm not sure about thought here. I don't know what word he used, but you can try and think of something. New idea, maybe? Because thought is a little bit different. Thought is like a philosopher thinking or somebody just thinking. A new idea that has not found its practical implementation, while innovation is this invention used for wide-scale commercial purposes. Okay. Yeah, again, very clear, balanced sentence. By following his claims, here you want a comma, right? Now, by following his claims, just a little bit odd sounding. What would be a good cohesive device to use here? As Archibuggy claims, you could say something like that. Linking phrase. As Archibuggy claims, comma, or as Archibuggy states, or whatever, all innovations are based on inventions. You've done the same thing here, semicolon. On the contrary, not all inventions are transformed into innovations. I think the semicolon works much better in this case than in this case. Now, if you wanted to rephrase a little bit, I think he does use transform. if you wanted to use your own vocabulary, you could maybe say not all inventions become innovations or something, to avoid repetition. If that's the phrase, I forgot, but I think he did use the word transform. I mean, it's not, you haven't really plagiarized here, so, but if you really want to use your own phrasing almost exclusively, you can find a way to just repeat invention and innovation and really rephrase everything else. So I could say, as Archibuggie explains, here he's not really claiming that much. He's just making a theoretical distinction, practical distinction. As Archibuggie explains, all innovations start out originally as inventions, but not all inventions become innovations, right? Or not all inventions end up on the market as innovations, something like that. Further, by providing several pictures, he asked the students to guess. Now here, I know that this is most of the video, but remember we're trying to stay away from examples like that. So we're kind of trying to stay away from what happens in the lecture room, how the audience reacts. We just really focus on the supporting idea, not so much on the actual proceedings in that lecture hall. So you can avoid that by just focusing on the supporting idea. And what is it? Why does he show these pictures to them? What is he trying to illustrate with that? Now, part of it is the whole process of them trying to guess and being confused a little bit. So again, this video is not explicit. The supporting idea, you have to kind of look for it. Now you could say that, for instance, something like, to illustrate the difficulty in drawing exact distinctions, so just making distinctions between the two concepts, Archibuggie demonstrates or shows several pictures, something like that. And you don't want to mention students, audience. You want to be as brief here as possible, because it is getting into the territory of examples and direct commentary. So you could say something like, Archibuggie goes on to show several images. Images is better than pictures, in order to demonstrate the difficulty in making clear distinctions, the difficulty in arriving at a clear definition between the two concepts, or something like that, right? And after that, that's a little bit too kind of circumstantial, like you're telling a story. So you want the linking device to be a little bit more academic. In writing, you would not see that, other than in storytelling. And after that, she did that or he did that. So here, the professor gave the audience, again we want to use the present tense, additional hint to distinguish. All of this is just describing what happened in the room. Instead of that, you should focus on what you did later on. Semicolon, he describes. You kind of like that structure. Semicolon, move on. I think it's a very good structure in academic language. If you want to try more variety, here we used while. Here semicolon. If you want to try a bit of variety, you can try something else. Maybe you can try subordination. That would be cool. But here, before we get to that, I think you should just forget about this detail. Focus on this, the process of making the product, because that really is the supporting idea. Okay. He describes innovation as the process of making the product available on a selling market. Sure. According to Archibugi, the most important distinction between the two is that innovation is, I'm trying to use your words here, involves a process of making the product commercially available on the market. So you could sort of use that phrasing as well as you've done here, and just focus on the supporting idea, right? That's the supporting idea here. His statement was supported by, again, you want to use the present tense, by the interesting story related to a ballpoint invention. Again, you don't want to include that example, right? And its everyday use and implementation. Now, what is supported? We stay away from examples, right? What does that story really illustrate? The ballpoint pen. He doesn't quite say it explicitly, but I guess you can try and make something out of it. Try and find a supporting idea, even when there isn't one. It's kind of implied. I think what he was doing is he was kind of trying to end with a paradox, a bit of a paradoxical way of framing the whole question, and that was what was initially the pen was just this insignificant, flimsy innovation. Invention. Nobody cared about the pen. It was neglected. The patent was turned down. But once it became commercially available, once it became an innovation, 50 years later, it had this enormous impact, and everybody has a pen now. So he kind of pulls it out of his pocket as a magic trick. This little thing, which initially was insubstantial, was seemingly had a neglected, insubstantial product, and all of a sudden it became this hugely influential product, right? Innovation. So you could say something like that, kind of like maybe put it as a paradox. And then he also said that it's unpredictable, right? We can never predict the impact that innovation is going to have. Nobody could predict that this little pen, initially neglected, would come back and all of a sudden become this important innovation used by everybody. So all of that, without even mentioning the pen, you could say Archibugi, because that's his final concluding idea. And he says, in conclusion, Archibugi just demonstrates or whatever that what can start out originally as an insignificant invention with little social impact, once it becomes an innovation, it can contribute to society in unpredictable ways, or something like that. And that's kind of the paradoxical formulation of his final conclusion. That example gave the students extra support on how to differentiate. Sure, but again, that's not really necessary here, right? We know that. To sum up, it can be said that innovation is an intrinsic aspect of all invention processes, which helps turn the newly created ideas into practical. Sure, we kind of said that already. Remember, we said that somewhere here, practical implementation, and that was the distinction between. I think ending with that kind of paradoxical statement at the end would frame it very nicely. Again, this was a very difficult, not very summarizable video. The one in the exam will be much clearer and much easier to focus on the supporting ideas and summarize. Now, obviously, your language is quite good here. You've used a lot of good phrasing, good grammar, good sentence structure. So overall, it's a very good paragraph.